Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason and this is Sports Spectrum. Our website, sportspectrum.com, of course, and my email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. If you'd like to reach me, if you want to get in touch with the show, maybe some feedback on today's guest, or you have a great guest idea or a topic or a story that we should be covering, you can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. And our guest today is Greg Hendricks. He is the campus pastor at the Rock Church in San Diego, California. I'll tell you a little bit more about Greg in a second. This is a dynamite conversation. It really is. We hit the gamut on a lot of different topics, and his story is a powerful one of just coming to Christ and how he even ends up into ministry. Before we get to Greg, I want to say thanks to our partners and sponsors today. Convoy of Hope, our newest sponsor and partner here at Sports Spectrum. We're so grateful to have them along here on the show. And if you don't know about Convoy of Hope, you need to go check out the website, convoynation.com. You need to go check out the website, convoynation.com. They're a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster responses. And right now, you can join your favorite players and athletes and teams in partnering with Convoy of Hope to fight hunger, poverty, and suffering in the U.S. and throughout the world. You can learn more and be a part of the great work that they are doing right now. Again, the website, convoynation.com, to donate and learn more, convoynation.com. We're also thankful to our friends at Ronald Blue Trust. You know about Ron Blue, advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise, helping their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. That's what we want to do with our finances. We want to steward them well. We want to be charitable in our giving, and we want to make sure that we're planning properly for the future. That's where Ronald Blue Trust comes in to help you with your finances. Check them out at ronblue.com and get in touch with them to help you with your financial questions and concerns. ronblue.com. So Greg Hendricks is our guest today. And like I said, he's the campus pastor at the Rock Church in San Diego, California. Now, I met Pastor Greg through a Bible study. So one of my great friends, Christine, works with the NFL, and she organized this Bible study that would take place once a week. And she would just invite different people in the sports space, media space, broadcasting space, to be a part of this Bible study. And most of them obviously are Christians, but it's an open invitation to whoever wants to come. And I, joined a few times. I think I've probably been a part of maybe 7 or 8 of those Bible studies. And I think they're still going strong. And Christina is just such an awesome person in inviting me, but really bringing people who are teaching God's word in a wonderful way. And Greg Hendricks is that person. And he was the guy that was teaching that day that I joined that Bible study. And I heard a guy who loved Jesus and was a great teacher and communicator of God's word, and started to kind of think in the back of my head, maybe we should get this guy on. I wonder what his story is. And in doing some research, talking to Christina, and certainly connecting with Pastor Greg, it was a no-brainer to have him come on the show. But I didn't know his full story. I didn't realize how he came to Christ in 2009. I didn't realize how he ended up in ministry. I didn't realize the background of even growing up without a dad. I didn't know all of that until this conversation. And it went in a bunch of different directions, all of which I think will encourage you as you hear Pastor Greg Hendricks' story today on the show. Let's take a listen. Pastor Greg, welcome to the show.
Man, appreciate it, Jay. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on here. Super excited to dive into some convo.
Absolutely. Lots to talk about. Let's start right off the top with the most recent, experience that you had just a couple days ago. We're running this in March, but it's recording in February. You just got back from Tampa, and people might be like, what's in Tampa? Well, the Super Bowl was in Tampa, and it was won by the team who plays in Tampa. And you got to hang out with the Buccaneers and watch them win a Super Bowl. What was that experience like?
Oh, man, once in a lifetime, that's for sure. I mean, not very often you get a chance to go there and see not only history, for many different reasons, but just to be a part of that whole experience was incredible. It was actually my first time ever being to a Super Bowl, and just all the stuff that goes on around it and leading up to it. And it was an incredible experience, man. We had an amazing time, met some amazing people, and just how things are in my life, man. It's just how God just be, orchestrating and weaving his hand throughout my life, man. I just happened to bump into the most random people, and it's just been such a great experience. And the Super Bowl was just that in general, being out there, being with people, seeing the celebration. So it was a once in a lifetime experience for sure.
Well, even in this COVID pandemic time, the fact that you got to go to a sporting event is very rare for most people. To say that is like, I'm so jealous because I haven't been to anything with large crowds since a year ago. So what was that like? And I know it was social distance. There was a lot of cardboard cutouts. Everybody kind of had to wear masks and stay where they were. But what was that experience like being at a sporting event during this pandemic?
I have to give credit to the NFL, man. They did a really good job of not only enforcing, face covering, distancing, but it wasn't to the point where you couldn't enjoy yourself while you were there. They did a really good job. It was kind of surreal because, you think Super Bowl and it's just jam packed with people.
Right.
And I think where it really hit me is when I got up to go to the bathroom and go grab something to eat, like at the snack bar, and there was no lines. You go, most of the time you ever go to one of those events, the line is just crazy. And I can only imagine it being at the Super Bowl. It's probably, on 10, meaning it's 10 times more than what it is. And it wasn't anything like that. It almost felt like a VIP experience. They had cardboard cutouts there, so it looked really, really full on TV. But I think the other part was really cool is that they had a lot of the first responder workers, frontline workers who are dealing with COVID. They honored them. So a lot of the tickets that were given away were a lot of people that were serving in hospitals, nurses, doctors, and they were all just kind of sprinkled throughout the crowd. And we happened to be sitting next to a group of frontline workers, and it was just cool just to hear their experience. They felt really honored to be there, and that they, probably no other time in their lifetime that they'd get a chance to go to something like that. But the NFL did a really good job, man. They did their best. I mean, obviously you can't catch everything and you can't enforce everything at certain times, but they did a really amazing job. And it was just really fun, man. And to be a part of there, all the energy in the building, and just the anticipation of seeing, the greatest of all time to play the quarterback position against a up and coming future potential greatest of all time. And, these two teams go at it. It was really, really cool to watch and fun to watch and see the competitiveness of the whole game. And, again, like I said, I was there on a biased thing. I was there with Tampa because I've served their team over the course of the year. And so, I'm rooting for Tampa, and the fact that they won decidingly, it was incredible, man. It was an incredible day. It was an incredible night as well.
Yeah, you're kind of bummed in a sense that you wish that it could have been a packed crowd and you could have your normal parade because, the hometown team wins in a Super Bowl in their own stadium. But I mean, it doesn't take away what they were able to accomplish at all. And you mentioned that you served with Tampa. I know you've done a couple chapel services, right? Can you share a little bit on what you're able to share just on your involvement in being able to minister to some of the players and the coaches?
Yeah, I did chapel for them twice this year. I did one for the coaching staff, the small coaches that are big followers of Jesus. And I did one for just the team and the coaches. So I got a chance to do two this year, which was really, really honor and privilege to do so. And then the year prior to COVID, I got a chance to do it for them when they came out to Los Angeles. They were playing the Los Angeles Rams, and I live in San Diego, so I was able to drive up and take my young boys with me and go up there and allow them to be a part of their experience. Very, very, very great bunch of guys, great group. Very strong, very tight-knit family. And you can just sense, I've done a couple of these in different sports and been around a lot of different athletes from basketball to football. And this group was really special, man. I can't sit here and lie to you, man. They're a really tight-knit group, very family-oriented, from quarterbacks coach to the receiver guys to the defensive guys, and just a real good group, very solid, very hungry, very humble. And, you can just tell when you're in that environment with them that they really want to learn, and they really subject themselves to learning. So it was a real honor, man, just to be able to share with them. Chapels don't tend to go very long because, their meetings are very, synced up. Like, hey, we got this amount of time, this amount of time, this amount of time. You got to knock it out. Yeah. So you got to be very prepared. But man, when I tell you the hunger, when you do get a chance to share, is just off the charts. They want to know about God, which is amazing. But then they also are just good people. They're good people. Like the day before the game was supposed to start, I believe it was on a Saturday. They actually had a prayer meeting in front of the stadium with some local churches that were there.
Yes, I knew about that.
I got a chance to go and sit in on that and just watch. I didn't speak or anything, but you just had different people coming up sharing their experience and what they're tied to. Everybody was masked up, so distance, so it was all compliant. But they were actually there praying, and a couple of the coaches showed up, including my good friend showed up, how I actually got into to go to the Super Bowl with. He showed up, they prayed, he prayed over, and it was just like, man, they're having a prayer gathering in front of the Super Bowl stadium. It was awesome, man. It was awesome. So just an incredible weekend, man, for so many reasons, including the Lord Jesus,
Yeah, absolutely. Greg Hendricks is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. So if I go back 25 years, and this is where you're going to share your testimony, but if I told you you'd be called Pastor Greg Hendricks, from the Rock Church, and you'd be doing chapel services for teams and ministering to different people, when you were 18 years old, would you just have laughed in my face if I told you that was where the Lord would have taken you?
Not only would I have probably laughed at you, I probably would have told you were crazy. Like it was like, no way. I absolutely didn't. No desire to be a pastor. No desire. I didn't grow up in the church. Didn't have any connection to the church. My wife didn't have any connection to the church. Our families didn't have any connection to the church. And my heart, ever since I was little. I don't know my dad to this day. So, I'm 43, don't know my dad, don't know what he looks like, never met him. And I don't harbor any bitterness or any resentment or anything like that. But my whole time growing up, man, I really took note of people that impacted my life, whether they believed in God, didn't believe in God. Like what I would do is I would take the kindness out of every male. Like say I made a different male and they all carry something different. One person's kind, one person's funny. Then you see another guy who's really good with their family. You would see another guy who was, well-spoken. I would take all these great attributes out of each person I met, and I would have compiled that in my heart. And in doing so, I would say, you know what, when I grow up, I would want to be this to my family, or I want to be this to my kids, or I want to be this to my spouse. And little did I know, what I was doing is I was compiling a representation of who God the Father was in my heart. I took all the best attributes, and that's who God the Father is, all the best attributes, because he's a loving Father. And man, I go tell you, Jay, once I gave my life to God full time, then it really just started taking off from there. It's like, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to be doing,
When did that take place?
Late 2009. It was my last year playing pro, and I got back from Ukraine. I was coming back from Ukraine, and I was flying back, and, still fairly young, but I could just sense that, my season of playing basketball was coming to an end, and I just knew it. And I was like, oh man, my career is over, and oftentimes for most athletes, man, that's a really hard space because you don't know what's next. And sometimes you see, guys spiraling out of control. Others, actually do really well. And it kind of fluctuates. And for me, I was like, I don't know what's next. I lived in a really small town at the time in Washington State called Cleveland, Washington. It's in the Cascade Mountains. Very, very small town. It's a town of 2,000. And I worked overnight at this golf resort. And one night I was working, called my friend up, and he was like, yo, you need to check out this church down here in San Diego. It's called the Rock Church. I think you would like it. Pastor's funny. I was like, oh, man, I'll check it out. So I went online. I started watching one sermon. Then I watched another sermon. Then I watched the third one. And every sermon, at the end, he would give an invitation to give your life to God. And so the third one, I just stood up. And I kind of had a sense God was tugging me, but I actually stood up, prayed to God, I'm giving you my life for real. Like, I'm not going to be saying it and not really living it. I'm actually going to be saying it, and I'm going to start living it. Here you go. Gave him my life. And don't know anything about, I don't even know what the word ministry means. You know what I'm saying? Like no grid for church at all.
Right.
And I give my life to God, and I kid you not, man, it's like this really bright light came into the room. It was just really like almost like someone shining a light in your eyes and you're kind of squinting. I just remember really weeping, and the light just left the room, and that was it. Like I had like a real radical encounter, and I was like, okay, here we go. And the only thing that I felt at that time, God spoke to me, is like, you need to get on a plane, fly to San Diego, and meet this pastor. So I came home that morning. My wife, who didn't have a relationship with God, came home. So I just gave my life to Jesus, and he told me to get on the plane and fly down. And she thought she thought I went crazy. She was like, "Oh man, what's wrong with you? You know, like,
yeah,
are you crazy?" And it kind of just took off from there, man. And you know, long story short, you know, over the course of the next couple of years, a lot of stuff, you know, started happening. And God just really started tweaking my life. And then I got the invitation to come to San Diego and start being involved in this church down here. And I did. And, you know, things have just been taking off like crazy in a good way. Not to say there hasn't been very hard seasons, because there has. Sure. I don't want to paint it as it's all, you know, roses and you know, and it's all sweet and dandy, because it's not. It's actually a lot harder, but you can have peace even in the midst of the hardness, you know. So that's what I've come to discover.
That's a great story. There's a lot I want to ask about going back a little bit, because you mentioned you were playing pro ball overseas, and I think there's some real you know, there's a lot of athletes and coaches that listen to this show, and I think there's going to be some real lessons in telling you that story as well. But tell me about that moment when you get saved and you're married. I presume at that time you said your wife, who was not a Christian. What was that process like in that moment? I had the same thing happened to me. I became a Christian at 26, 27. My wife, it took her about 4 or 5 years to come to Christ. And, you know, that was a hard season for me, because we were married at that time as well. In how do I act? And I want her to enjoy the peace and come see this Jesus that I've experienced, but you can't force it, because it ends up pushing someone away, at least in my experience, than when you try to force it on them. So I had to let her have her own experience and her own journey to Christ. What was that like for you and your marriage during those early years?
Well, to be honest with you, we weren't married, and that was the thing. Okay. It's like we were together. We were together for about 12 years prior, and you know, growing up, my impression of what it meant to a man to treat a woman, I didn't have any good examples, to be very honest with you.
Sure.
And so I really wrestled with that, because I didn't want to be someone who got married and was not faithful to my wife. So I really, really struggled with that. But when I did give my life to God, we were together. We lived together. We had 2 children by this time. We 12 years in, and I was just always very hesitant to marry her, because I didn't want to be someone that wasn't faithful.
Sure.
And so, and that was my struggle prior to, you know, I was unfaithful. You know, I was living a monogamous life. I was doing things that definitely weren't adding up to living for God, you know, and so I really wrestled with that. When I did give my life to God, I felt like the Lord said very clearly to me, now you can marry my daughter. Like, I trust you. You can marry. Like, I got the green light in my spirit and in my heart, because I know I was committing. So I remember, you know, I actually asked, hey, you know, would you want to get married? And she was shocked. Like, why you want to get married? We've been together for so long. What's the deal? Why you want to get married? And what she didn't understand is that to God, I felt like I was held to a higher accountability, not only to her and to, you know, my children and my home, but I was held accountable to the Lord.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, the fear of the Lord was a good thing. It's a healthy fear. You know, it's like you have a dad who really cares about you. If you do it his way, things are going to go in the direction you want them to go. And so I personally was like, got the green light from there. And then once I did that, and we ended up getting married again, it wasn't like something that just happened overnight. It was a kind of an evolution of like your maturity in God, your maturity in your relationship, your maturity as a man, and your maturity as a father. What does it look like to communicate? What does it look like to communicate through hard times? You know, when you're in disagreement, all of that stuff. And what lens are you doing it through? Are you doing it through the lens of the Father? Or are you doing it through your lens? And so that's an ongoing process. Not to say you figure it out and you get it, but that's an ongoing process to the day he calls you and your spouse home. But here's what happened, though, meant to be very, very honest with you, is when I got saved, the Lord was telling me I was running this incredible thing out of Africa. I was helping a lot of kids out. My life was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And the Lord's like, I want you to lay all that down. I want you to move to San Diego and go into ministry. I don't know what ministry means. I don't know anything about the church. This is a leap of faith. Mind you, our families live in this small town. So to uproot a whole family from grandma, auntie, all this stuff, and none of them have a relationship with God. But the Lord gave me a revelation. So I'm accountable to that revelation. So when the Lord gives us a revelation, or when he gives a listener a revelation, you're accountable to the revelation, not the people around you. So oftentimes you can share something or like, hey, you're making this drastic move and God told you to do it. A lot of people may not understand. So you're going to get pushback. You're going to get resistance. You're going to get why and all this stuff, which I did get. And I was like, I'm accountable to what God told me and what he wants me to do for me and my family. And sometimes it comes with backlash. But when I moved, the whole reason why I moved to San Diego to be in ministry was two reasons. Number one, I felt for me, this environment that I was in at the church was an environment that to learn how to become a better husband to my wife. Number two, it was also the environment for me to learn how to become a better dad to my kids. That was the only reason why I moved, to be very honest with you. It's like, okay, if I can learn how to do this well in this environment, it's a starting point. And then once that happened, man, it really changed the game of my understanding of what it meant to be a man to my family, a man in society. And when you start developing in that regard and you start really transforming that regard, then God can trust you to help you to transfer others around you into that regard. Hence all of the crazy opportunities that have been birthed out of it, like Tampa Bay Chapel and, Seattle Storm Chapel and ministering to this athlete and that athlete and doing these NFL cruises with the Steelers and the Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. And you're speaking into these young guys' lives. It just ballooned into something, like you said. If you had told me this when I was 18, I would have laughed at you and told you you're crazy.
A quick break from our programming to tell you about our newest partners and sponsors here at Sports Spectrum, Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster responses. Their goal is to bring help and hope to those who are impoverished, hungry, and hurting. So you need to check out convoynation.com. That's the website, convoynation.com. A great program to align with. Listen, we're all looking for places to serve, to give our money and know that it's going to help someone else. That's what Convoy of Hope is about. Convoynation.com, again, is the website fighting hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. And right now, you can join Convoy of Hope and be a part of their starting lineup. See, they're partnering with our favorite players and teams and with Convoy of Hope to fight that hunger and poverty and suffering that nobody should have to go through here in the United States, but even throughout the world. And in doing so, listen to this. You can advocate, give, network, and volunteer to help ensure that those in need receive hot meals, groceries, haircuts, health and dental screenings, family portraits, socks, shoes, clothing, school supplies, hygiene kits, and much more. Basic essentials that so many of us take for granted. That's what Convoy of Hope is doing, and that's why their work is so important. So join them. You can learn more right now at convoynation.com and donate and be a part of the great work they're doing. Convoy of Hope, convoynation.com. We're also thankful to our partners and sponsors today, Ronald Blue Trust. They've been with us now for a while. And listen, we all have questions about our finances. I mean, every time I talk to someone, it usually involves a conversation about the future and savings and giving, charitable giving, trust and estate settlement services, those type of conversations that we have in terms of what we're going to leave as far as a legacy. Well, that's where Ronald Blue Trust comes in. Their advisors applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise to help their clients make those wise financial decisions and experience clarity and experience confidence. And like I said, leave a lasting legacy. They provide comprehensive financial services and objective advice to over 9,500 clients across the wealth spectrum in all 50 states. You can go to ronblue.com. That's the website, ronblue.com. They build strong relationships with their clients, all based on trust. They speak into their financial lives and walk with them to help them realize their financial and life goals. Check out Ronald Blue Trust right now at ronblue.com to learn more. ronblue.com. Greg Hendricks is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. I want to go back a little bit growing up. You said you never knew your dad, and I had father issues as well. I certainly knew my father, and sometimes there were moments where I wished I didn't, where it would have been easier as a kid and as a teenager and even in my 20s. I certainly had those moments when I wasn't a Christian where I was just wishing him to not even be around at all instead of the being around and causing the pain that he had caused. For you, what was that process like? You said you harbored no bitterness. Have you tried to find him and communicate and have a relationship? And then maybe speak into a little bit of that bitterness that doesn't exist for you right now and kind of how you work through that. Because a lot of people hang on to past bitterness and anger. And, you know, we know what Paul says in Ephesians to get rid of it all, but we hang on to that. So can you kind of speak into that and take us through that?
Yeah, you know, again, I grew up with my dad and didn't have any relationship with him, not even till this day. And for me, you know, he was never there in the very beginnings, and I don't know very much about him. Even when I have conversations with my mom, I was conceived out of a one-night stand. And from what she told me and what I understand is that he actually did show up, wanted to help, but she was going through something in her life at the time where she said, no, don't come around, go ahead and leave, don't ever show back up. And he never did. And I think fatherlessness is at the root of a lot of issues in our country. And I would just say parental issues of not being there for young children causes a lot of people to grow up with a certain mentality, avoiding their heart for love, a healthy understanding of what love looks like. Not only, I'm not talking about just a physical love, but an emotional love, an embracing, a caring. I'm actually writing a book on it right now about fatherlessness, where I feel like a lot of problems that we deal with that are systemic and not only in our country, but in our society, a lot of it stems back to that. But I think for me and my journey, as I was growing up, I think I did battle with bitterness. I did harbor some resentment, and a lot of stuff I did out of like, okay, I'm going to show you that I can do it and I don't need nobody's help, And that's not a healthy place to do it from, because you're always doing it with like chip on your shoulder. And that chip on your shoulder can become a boulder in your heart, Essentially, you can have a hardened heart. But then when I gave my life to God, God really started revealing some stuff to me that I actually were harboring, and it wasn't healthy for me, and it was preventing my growth and maturity, not only as a man, but just as a human being and as a believer in God. And every time God shows you something, he doesn't show you something to call you out. He always shows you something to call you up, meaning to call you up into what you're probably supposed to really be in your life, which is, for me, to be a father to many, to help other people get through their journey. And so as he was showing me these different aspects of my heart, like pride, showing me stuff as like, lack of humility, all these things that I were using as defense mechanisms, I would essentially be like, you know what, God, forgive me. I would openly repent, confess it, and then I repent of it, and I'd ask God to take it away from me. And, sometimes it would happen that day. Sometimes it would be over the course of a couple of years. And then after that started happening, I started helping more people. And the more I helped more people walk through their pain that I actually went through, the more I started to see like I was getting healed to a certain point. Like, oh, okay, I'm being set free. And I'm not going to lie, even writing this book stirred some stuff up that I didn't even know was there. Yeah. Now, have I tried to find my dad? I did like a DNA test and did all of that. And, I saw maybe a couple cousins that were potentially there. but I haven't like, yo, I'm going to find you type of thing. But if that guy was to walk through my door today, it would be, I'm to a place now where I'm healthy enough in my identity and who God called me to be, my identity in Christ, who God says who God says I am in him. And knowing that if he walked in this door, my physical dad, biological dad, and he sat on my couch, I would be able to say, hey, man, let's have a conversation. Tell me about yourself. What are your dreams? What are your fears? What are your regrets? You know, what have you learned? I can ask healthy questions like that because I'm in a place of redemption and I'm not in a place where I'm angry. And a lot of people don't get to that space. They harbor that, to be honest with you. And it honestly can prevent a person from growing and maturing. And I'm not saying that it's not unwarranted, but your true freedom and walking in freedom with God and freedom in your life starts with forgiveness. If you understand what forgiveness looks like, that's the real key to freedom in your life.
I have to imagine, too, not just as a campus pastor when you're ministering to your congregation or discipling them or whatever, shepherding them, but even in the athletic world, when you talk to athletes, this is a prominent issue with a lot of athletes, not just the identity side of what you said and where your identity is found, but with this bitterness and a lot of it being a parent that's missing or mostly a dad, unfortunately, that wasn't there for them. And so they don't have this example of what a father looks like. I have to imagine you've seen that a lot in the different spheres of influence that you've been a part of.
100%, man, 100%. You see that. And the other part about that is that it won't allow them to have conversation because it stirs too much pain up. Or it'll stir like, I don't even want to talk about that, and yes. That still allows a space for it to harbor and fester. But the more you talk about it, especially with someone that probably has walked the same road as you and they see your life or they see something in you like, yo, man, if you can give freedom, then I know there's hope for me, too. And the Bible says that, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if he's the same for Greg, he's going to be the same for Jason. If he's the same for Jason, he's going to be the same for this guy over here or this young girl over here. And the beauty of that, man, to be very honest with you, is the fact that if you're willing to go alongside in that journey with God, God will, flip over some things for you to see that. But then he'll also allow a place for you to receive healing in that space if you really want it. And most people, they want it, but they don't know how to go about the journey. And again, I just was like, you know what, I'm going to explore it. I'm going to see what happens. And I'm going to just go along for the journey. And God has given me so much like real good insight and keys to help other people with that it's allowed me to speak into everybody across the board, man, from not only just, sports figures, but to political figures, people of high prominence, authors, kings, just like people that I had thought nobody in a million years that I would have access to these folks, but I do. And a lot of them are older than me. Some of them are younger than me, but some are older than me. And I'm speaking into their lives because, God has just allowed me to do that. And it's simply just because I said, yeah, not because I'm anything special or, I've done something supernaturally crazy. All I did was simply say yes. And I always say this, God don't want any ability but availability. Are you available to do it? Are you willing to do it? And if so, go on a journey. I think lastly, Christians, man, we desire the outcome all the time. But God always desires the journey. And the reason why is because in the journey, you learn something not only about yourself, but you learn probably something even greater about him. And that part people can identify with. People can't always identify with Jason's breakthrough or Greg's breakthrough or this person's breakthrough, but they can identify with Jason's journey and Greg's journey, meaning like, man, there was a day I was impatient. Yeah. And quite frankly, I wanted to give up. And there was a day where I was actually extra angry or extra impatient or whatever the case may be. They can identify with these points in your journey, but they can't identify with the breakthrough. And I believe God really desires a journey more so than just the outcome.
Yeah, that's well said. So this book, can you give us a little taste? When's it coming out? Are you still in the early process of this thing? Because I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm probably like 50 to 60% done. Okay. I've written 10 chapters, and now I'm just going back and fine tooth it, fine comb it a little bit just to make sure that it's edited right, it sounds right, it flows right. But essentially, the crux of the book is going to be about fatherlessness, the impact of fatherlessness. When you don't know your earthly father, but then you meet your heavenly father, and then how God works all of that stuff out in your life. And again, this is speaking from somebody that I didn't know God. I didn't have no grid for the church. I'm not speaking from being in the church for many, many years. I'm speaking from just not only my journey, but what I know to be true and what I've seen in other lives around me, just from people that I've interacted with, including my own family, and what has been the byproduct of that by simply being submissive and being willing to go on this journey. So that's going to be the whole basis of the book. I'm really excited about it. It's been a tough process because I've never written a book. So,
trust me, I understand.
But I'm excited because I think it's going to lend a lot of great insight. And as I like to say, some kingdom keys, some keys to really help unlock some things that maybe people are really struggling with, especially in this season.
Well, as somebody who's written 2 of them, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's not anything I ever thought I was qualified to do or even wanted to do, Greg. But I know that God will honor that as you push through this process. And that'll be another reason for you to come back when the book comes out. And we'll make sure we talk more about when that comes. I'm curious because I think a lot of people, when they heard you share your story earlier, they said, oh, you just got up, moved to San Diego and had to go meet this pastor. And for those that don't know, I don't know if we've mentioned his name yet. Miles McPherson is the pastor, I presume, that you're talking about, who is the senior pastor of the Rock Church in San Diego. And that's now who you work for and work with in ministry at the Rock Church. What was that moment like, though, when you arrive and you're like, Miles, I'm Greg, and I got saved online from your messages. Like, I can't imagine him hearing that and thinking, all right, let's get this guy out of here. He's nuts. Yeah. But you had this opportunity to meet with him, and now you're doing ministry with him.
Yeah, well, let me back up. Let me tell you the story behind this. This is a really crazy story. So God actually said, get on a plane, fly down here. So I called my boy who's in San Diego, and I tell him, I said, hey, man, I'm coming home. We're going to go to church on Sunday, and I'm going to go meet the pastor. And he laughed at me, and he actually tried to talk me out of it. He was like, man, you just don't meet the pastor that it doesn't work that way. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I already booked my ticket. I'm coming and I know I'm going to meet the pastor. And he's like, man, you don't understand this, man. It don't work that way. He's like trying to talk to me. I said, okay, well, anyway, I'm coming. So I get down there the Saturday before, and, I have a pretty, in the basketball circle, especially at that time, because it was a little more closer to my high school days, I have a bit of reputation. I was first team, all city, all CIF, and all of that stuff. And so when I got home, I went to the rec center to play basketball, and all my, counterparts are in this gym. Like, yo, Greg's back. What's up, man? How you doing? They know I played. They know I coached in the NBA 1 year with Seattle. So they know I have a little track record. And like, what you doing here, man? I'm like, man, I'm going to church tomorrow. I just gave my life to God, and you should come with me. And they're like looking at me like, who are you, man? Like, what happened to you? Like, we're not going to church, man. You're crazy. I was like, nah, man, you need to give your life to Christ. And I'm in there evangelizing. I don't even know that word, but that's what it was I was doing essentially. I was like, you need to give your life to Christ. So anyway, the day ends. The next day comes and we go to the church. So I'm there with my friend who tried to talk me out of it. And we're there with another mutual friend that we both know. We sit right in the front, and Pastor Miles comes out and he preaches. And he's preaching, and he gets done, and he goes and stands to the side of the stage, which he doesn't do anymore at all. And obviously, because of COVID, and we're not even meeting. But even prior to that, he doesn't even do that. But he stands at the side of the stage, and if you know anything about these big churches, there's a crowd, a sea of people in front of him trying to talk to him. And I'm like on the other side of all these people. And verbatim, Jay, I turned my back and I said, God, you told me to come, make it happen. Just like that. That's verbatim. And I turned my back and I turned back around and I looked, and nobody's standing in front of him. And he's standing there looking at me with his arms crossed, just looking at me. So I walk right up to him and I said, okay, God. So I walk right up to him and I said, hey, my name is Greg, and I think God is telling me to go into ministry. I don't even know what that word means. I'm like, ministry? And he's like, he starts joking with me. Oh, man, how old are you, young blood? And I'm telling him my age. He's like fixing my coat, and he's like kind of messing with me. He's like, I'm going to be 50. Can you believe that? I'm going to be 50. I look good, though. I look good. He's like, messing with me. I go, yeah, that's cool. I said, man, God told me to come down here and for you to pray for me. And he was like, oh, okay. He goes, well, he goes in evangelist. Are you going to you asked Christ to be your Lord and Savior? Yeah, I did. I actually did it to a service online. He's like, oh, man, you're saved. He goes, but I'm going to pray for you anyway. So he puts his hands on my shoulders. I put my hands on his shoulders, and we lean over, and both of our heads are down. And the first thing that shoots through my mind was like, dang it, man, I wish I had a picture of this, because this is a big moment. I know it is. I can just feel it to the core of my bones. Like, this is something, God is doing something right now. And so we get done, we pray, and he goes, hey, all right, man, stay in touch. You know, love to hear from you. I got to go. And he takes off. And I'm like, all right, well, that's that. And I said, all right, man, let's go. So me and my friend, we turn around to walk out the church. And this lady walks up on us and she goes, hey, I'm such and such with the Rock Church. The LA Times is doing a front page article and they want to know if they can use this picture. And they flip the camera around, and it's me and him like this.
Gosh. And
I'm like, oh, I was like, dang, guys, it worked that quick. I didn't even say anything. Like, it just shot through my mind. And so that if you can Google it, if you type the article, it's actually, you can Google it. The picture, the image is on there, and it ended up on the front page of the LA Times of me and him like this. They wrote a huge article on the church, and they actually gave me one. I have one sitting in my house, and the other one is sitting in our church. Yeah. But after that point, man, I went home. I've been doing stuff in Africa. I was going to Africa for 4 years, doing this incredible ministry out there. And then when I actually came to the church, I got on staff. And to close the story, one day we were in the office, and his Pastor Miles' sister decorates the church. And so this picture was hanging up in the office, and she was moving it around. I happened to be with her. I was like, oh, that's a nice picture. And she was like joking, like, what you know about that picture? You don't know nothing about that picture. And I was like, I know a little bit of something about that picture. And she was like, you don't know nothing about that picture. And I was like, yeah. So this goes on for like 10 minutes. And she goes, what you know about this picture? I said, that's me. And she was like, that ain't you. And she looks closely, and underneath the subtitle says Pastor Miles McPherson with Greg Hendricks, da-da-da-da. And she was like, oh my God, that is you. And I go, yeah. She was like, does Miles know about this? And so he ended up finding a story, and it just kind of, history was written after that. But it was so funny. And now, I'm here, and I'm actually serving alongside of him and helping to expand the ministry here in San Diego, which has been great.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite stories. Seriously. I mean, that's just, and it's only God, right? When you think about a story like that, you couldn't have written a story like that, right?
No way. I couldn't even have made that up, like it's seriously all God. And it's been great, man. It's been a great journey.
I love
here
it.
To serve in the ministry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. As we wind down here, I think the question I want to ask, it's kind of a two-parter, putting on your pastoral hat. As you think about 2020 and all that we went through, and now even in 2021, we're still going through it, getting a little bit better, it feels like, but not just from a pandemic, from everything, right? Racial injustice and just a political divide that was so terrible, and it continues a little bit. But when you think about where you are now as a pastor, what's the biggest burden on your heart, and what are you most hopeful for? So it's a two-part question. Let's start with what's really kind of something that God's wrestling with you on, and maybe a burden that you've been feeling here where we are in early 2021.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest burdens I think that God has put on my heart is I think it's two things, actually. First is to really help just in the body of Christ, churches work alongside of each other. Again, my background is not necessarily growing up in the church, but being involved in ministry now for a number of years, I see like a lot of churches are siloed and they don't work together. And that baffles me, because I think if all churches were to work together, we'd probably have the strongest voice, and not a voice to where you're shaming people and, dominating over them, but you're actually bringing strength and really healthy solution to complicated problems, and when you're seeking God's heart for these solutions on things, and you're seeking them in unity with other brothers and sisters, even if they're in another denomination, but you're doing it with the heart of unity, then that is representation to people who don't know God. They can see, well, the church has their thing together, and they're having this ecumenical mindset where they're coming together, they're doing it in unity, even if they're, quote unquote, denomination is from a different background, they're seeking it in unity. That's something that I would want to be a part of. I would want to be a part of that group, a body of Christ. And I feel like that's a big burden for me, because I don't understand it. I don't understand why, the Christian community, tears down its own at times, and even when that person falls, that we demonize them or, shake our heads or say something, negative around. Because when you start demonizing certain things or certain actions or even certain people, you start to generalize the same thing for everybody,
Yes.
So demonization turns into generalization at that point. So I've been having a real burden on bringing unity for sensible solutions, kingdom solutions for complicated problems. And my heart is to collaborate. I like collaborating with a lot of people on how do we continually expand the kingdom of God together, even if we may have differences on certain things, but we have an agreement on the base thing that Christ is, Lord and Savior, and he's our guide. He's going before us. He's coming behind us. We can start there and then talk about our differences. The other thing I would say is just, race reconciliation. What does that look like? What kind of conversations are we having? Are we having conversations from pain and hurt? Or are we having conversations knowing that we can have victory, like I said earlier, if we are able to work together? And to not demonize people, man, not shame people and not to shame any race. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I would say, the African-American community has had it very hard. And obviously, especially within the last year, and that's very evident. But we have to continually press forward and move forward as a unit and as a group of people together. It's not going to be just the African-American community doing this. We're all going to have to figure out how do we make this stronger and better. And so I think those two things I've been wrestling with. And what does that look like? How I can strength, I don't have all the solutions, but I'm willing to sit at the table, even with people that I may necessarily agree with, and not demonize them, but listen to them. And hopefully they would have the same. And if they don't have the same response in regards to what I bring to the table, then that's okay. I'll move forward and move on and won't hold anything towards you, but try to seek something that will bring strength here and for the future of not only our current population, but the ones that are come, the next generation. What does that look like? Because if we're not modeling it and they're watching it, what are we leaving for them to inherit? That's a big deal, And so I would say those things to start.
How about what you're most hopeful for as we wind down? That'll be my last question. What are you most hopeful for here in 2021?
I think I'm most hopeful for the fact that we're trending in the right direction. I'm hopeful for that conversations are actually being had. I'm hopeful for that the people who really have a heart posture to bring unity and not cause divide get in the positions to voice those opinions. I'm hopeful for leadership, even if I don't necessarily agree with that, I would be welcome to the table to speak to it. And even if I'm not, that my actions in my life would represent that I deserve to be at that table to say something. And to be able to voice an opinion. I'm hopeful for the fact that our next generation is so smart, man, and they have so much access to information and tools to grow that if we shepherd them the right way and grow them the right way and do the things the right way, we can actually empower them and equip them to really make a difference in this next season. So I'm really hopeful for that we're just evolving at such a rapid pace that if we really equip our next generation with the right mindset, that we can actually see some long-term generational sustainable change.
That's good stuff there from Greg Hendricks. He's the campus pastor at the Rock Church in San Diego, California, and looking forward to your new book, which we'll have you back on for when it's released at some point in the future. Just appreciate your voice, appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk again soon, Greg. Thanks for being here.
Man, thank you for having me. It was amazing.
And many thanks to Pastor Greg Hendricks for being a part of Sports Spectrum today and joining us here on the show. He was great. What a story, huh? And there's so much more to talk about with him, and we haven't even scratched the surface on our conversations. There was probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that I had for him that we didn't even get to. But those are my favorite conversations, when we just have a conversation and it's not just a question and answer. And think about Pastor Greg having never met his father and now a father himself, pastoring a church, preparing to write a book, doing chapel services for NFL teams and NBA teams and WNBA teams. The fact that he was born and conceived in a one-night stand, and look at how God is using this man to impact so many people. And it's so cool to watch, and I just loved his story, and I really appreciate him being a part of the show. Make sure you check out Instagram, search Greg Hendricks, and give him a follow there. And looking forward to his new book, too, on fatherlessness. And as someone who grew up in a confused relationship with his own father, I'm really looking forward to hearing from Greg and seeing what this new book is about. And we will definitely get him back here on the show. So thanks to Pastor Greg. We also want to thank our sponsors and partners today, our friends at Ronald Blue Trust. Check them out at ronblue.com. Comprehensive financial services and objective advice, applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise. Check it out at ronblue.com for Ronald Blue Trust. For any questions and concerns and maybe just some direction that you want to take in your finances, check out Ronald Blue Trust at ronblue.com. And of course, our friends at Convoy of Hope, our newest partners and sponsors here at Sports Spectrum, that faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to fight hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. You need to check them out at Convoy of Hope and their website, convoynation.com. Convoynation.com. You can donate. And just a great organization to align with, to serve, to help, to partner with. We're grateful to have them with us here at Sports Spectrum. Check them out again at convoynation.com. You can also make sure you check out our website, sportspectrum.com, and do tune in next time for our next edition of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that we ask you to do on the podcast, getting the word out as we share Jesus with the world in the intersection of sports and faith. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. We love you guys and hope you all have a great rest of your day.